Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, and welcome back to the channel, and we've got a very quick balance patch to go over, a relatively decent-sized balance patch for Smite 2 that was released yesterday. Obviously, they've been holding off on balance for the most part, leading up to Vegas, but we kind of know the patch that Vegas is going to be played on now. We probably won't have these balance changes in. I think they're going to be kind of locked in on a certain patch. But for the live client, we've got a relatively big patch to go over here in terms of balance for the game. So, first up, we got a few bug fixes. They fixed an issue where Bomber's Cudgel and Dagger were not providing strength or intelligence based on new items purchased. Obviously, these items provide strength or int, whichever one is higher. And so if your strength was originally higher, but then you bought a load of int, it wouldn't be switching, so that's a good fix. They've added lighting fixes to the match lobby. Hopefully that makes it look a bit better. Fixed an issue where cycling through gods before purchasing an item returned you to the wrong god page. Interesting, that's good to see. Updated the coloring on Anubis' Senko Sage card art to more closely match the in-game model, so just a little fix there. Moving into the actual balance though, first up, Agni's Rainfire is getting buffed by 5% int scaling. I don't see why Agni is getting buffed, to be honest. Agni seems really strong to me at the moment. Obviously, it's only a 5% int scaling buff or 15% on a triple bomb, so honestly, it's not that big of a deal. But I don't really think Agni needs the buffs. I think Agni with the new mid builds is actually really strong. Athena is getting a buff to her aspect of war, so when Athena lands, she gains the shield she would normally provide to allies, so definitely really nice. You know, this aspect is kind of bad just because you lose so many benefits for the ability to go to an enemy. And at least now you're not losing the shield and the damage, you're just losing the damage. So ultimately, I'm not sure if this will actually be good or not, but it's definitely going to be a lot better than before. You're not losing quite as much. Geb is getting a nerf to the basic attack damage reduction on his passive from 25% down to 5%, so this is basically non-existent anymore. It will make an impact, but it's not going to be like Geb sitting in auto attacker's face and just tanking a quarter of their damage. This is pretty crazy, honestly. I would have liked to see this maybe nerfed down to like, I don't know, 10%, but then also nerf the like max HP threshold that you can take from a certain ability to like maybe 25% instead of 20, obviously increasing that as a nerf, because I think that also might be a little bit of a problem, especially you know, later as the game goes, as abilities start hitting you really hard, especially with like a full damage Geb build. Mulan is getting some buffs. They have increased spear thrust damage by 10 at all ranks and the bonus damage by 10 at all ranks as well, so just 20 across the board if you're hitting people with the leveled up spear thrust. Grapple can no longer be CC buffered because it was causing a lot of confusing interactions. I've seen a couple of these floating around the community on like Twitter and Reddit and stuff. Because of the way it moves people and the way it moves Mulan, it was causing some very weird interactions if you hit like a CC buffered jump or something like that, so that's pretty cool to see. Just another reason why jumps shouldn't be CC bufferable in my opinion, but if they're not going to make that sweeping change, these kind of fixes will be good. New Eye is getting a nerf to her clay soldier health from 100 plus 20%. It's now 100 plus 15%, so just a little bit less of her max health being added to the soldiers. And this is of course good. Clay soldiers are way too tanky in Smite 2. They're such a pain to deal with, especially early game, but even towards the mid and late game as well, they're really tanky. Odin is getting a buff. His shield scaling is now 40% strength instead of 30% strength, will be the same amount of int. And Gunya's might now reduces in cooldown instead of 14 flat, it's 14 down to 12 based on ability rank, which is pretty good. Definitely fine with some Odin buffs. He was one of the top solo laners in the super early days of the game, but since a lot of other solo laners have released like Amaterasu and Sobek and all that kind of stuff, Odin just kind of fell off massively, so some buffs is fine. Ra is getting a shift. They have decreased the base damage on Searing Pain by 50 at all ranks, but they have increased the int scaling by 15%. So this is, you know, trying to put Ra towards an int scaling build a little bit more. You know, if you were going like solo lane Ra, and of course if you were going aspect Ra, this doesn't matter for aspect Ra, so he's just going to be losing 50 base damage on the ability. So yeah, nerf for solo lane tanky Ra / aspect Ra and a buff for mid lane int Ra, and that is going to be really strong now. 125% int is actually kind of nuts considering you could easily get to like 1,000 int in a late game build for mages now. With the addition of Dreamer's Idol and Rod of Tahuti being slotted into builds, you can very easily get like upwards of 1,000%, not 1,000% int, oh my god, 1,000 in, and 125% of that is going to be 1,250 damage added to this ability, meaning effectively it's going to be hitting for 2,000 raw damage, so that might be a little bit scary on mid lane in Ra builds, but we'll see how it goes. Moving into item balance, Bomber's Cudgel, they have increased the reduced damage dealt to lane minions from -20 to -25% on both of these items. So my guess is people are still building these in lane roles and still kind of getting away with it. They obviously don't want that. They want junglers to be jungling and they want laners to be laning for the most part. Obviously you can still do your buffs and, you know, maybe occasional side camps and stuff like that, but they've got to find a balance here where these aren't viable to be built by laning roles. Otherwise, you know, everyone's just going to build these so they can jungle. Heartseeker is getting a nerf from 3% of your strength to 2.5% of your strength in terms of scaling the percent health damage. This is sensible. I've been saying this for months now. You know, as soon as strength ability-based items become good, Heartseeker is going to be a problem. Like at 3% strength, even with 300 strength in your build, which is not a lot at all, you can get way more than that in a lot of builds, especially if you go Parashu. That's going to be dealing 9% max health damage. You know, if you've got 500 100 strength, that's going to be dealing 15% max health damage with no subsequent hit reduction. So that's just completely insane. This definitely needed the nerf. It could probably go down to 2%, to be honest, and I'll be pretty fine with that. Lane aim bow is getting a 50 gold cost reduction. I don't think that's going to make this item worth building, to be honest. It's just very weird. It doesn't really consistently apply the anti-heal, and it's also not great for DPS and hunter builds. Screeching Gargoyle, the active protection debuff is going from 25 to 20. This makes sense. Screeching Gargoyle was already quite a popular item, and then they just straight up added 25% prod shred to it for 4 seconds, which is going to make it very good. Shogun's is getting 5 more magical protection. Pretty nice for that item. Stampede is getting nerfed to 90 seconds instead of 60. This definitely makes sense. This item was insanely strong. We all saw this on PTS. We've now seen it on the live client. It's basically Heavenly Wings from Smite 1, which is on like about 120 second cooldown or something like that in Smite 1, and this was on 60. It's now on 90, so it will definitely be a little bit worse. Still though, this item is going to be really strong. It's 60% decaying movement speed, so you know, for the first couple of seconds, you're going very, very fast with this item. Obviously provides slow immunity as well, which is really useful against stuff like Cupid ult. Just a really strong item in general, but nice to see it nerfed. And Sunbeam Bow, they have decreased damage per projectile from 15 to 10 on the base damage. I don't think this is going to affect things much. A lot of the damage that comes from Sunbeam Bow is the 20% of your basic attack damage per projectile. Taking off 5 base damage is going to make it a slight bit worse in the early game, like when you first buy it, if you're rushing it first item, but other than that, it's probably not going to matter too much. Sunbeam Bow is probably still going to be about as strong as it was before. Obviously, it has been nerfed already. They did nerf it in one of the previous patches, but now they've nerfed it again, but this nerf probably isn't going to matter too much, honestly, for Sunbeam Bow. But yeah, there you go. Just a small balance update for Smite 2, addressing a couple of major concerns. You know, Geb being one of the major ones. Also, the jungle starters being pretty major. Heartseeker pretty major. Stampede also pretty major as well. So just addressing a few things that have been kind of overperforming or underperforming. There's a few buffs in here as well in Smite 2 at the moment. And the nice thing about these patches is the way they're doing Smite 2 at the moment, you know, they kind of just drop these patches whenever they needed. So if there are some other issues that arise, because obviously Open Beta 1 was a really, really big shift in the game. They've added aspects, they've added tons of new gods, they've added new items and stuff. If things do become a problem, they can very easily just kind of address that with a future small balance patch like this, which I will of course keep you posted on. I'll be covering all of these as they come out. But yeah, what do you guys think of this patch? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Let me know down below, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.